going to do the on my shelf tag today, which might include some tripod gymnastics, so we'll just see what happens. I was tagged by Savannah over at The Pretentious English Major. If you haven't seen her channel, go and check it out. It's wonderful. She makes some really interesting and funny videos. She also talks a lot about theatre, which is something that I don't see a lot of on BookTube. This tag has done the rounds, so I'm sure you know the premise of it. I have some random numbers and I'm going to show you some books on my shelf. I really like this tag because it gives you the opportunity to talk about some books that you might not otherwise talk about. So to start with, we have bookshelf number 1. I've picked number 8, so that is, we won't count that because that's a notebook. 8. And as you can see on the spine, that is the Poetical works of Keats. I studied some Keats poetry in my first year of university and really enjoyed it. I'm not a huge poetry reader, but Keats is one that really gets to me. Ode to a Nightingale and La Belle Dame sans Merci are my favourites. The number on this one is 14. This is number 14 if I counted that correctly. This is Hibiscus Coast by Paula Morris, and I have not read this. The reason that I bought this book was for one of my classes, New Zealand literature class. I bought this in the hope that I would get a whole lot of reading done before I started the class, and I didn't realise that they were changing it for the next year. So I didn't read this then, and I haven't read it since. It is New Zealand literature. I can come off my New Zealand literature shelf, and yes, female author, and also she is of Māori descent, so that's another reason that I would quite like to read it, because I'm trying to find more books from a Māori perspective. That we're going down in the world, I will move over here. That's my cello case over there. It's proving quite difficult to get a good angle here, because there isn't space for the tripod legs, and I want to leave them at the same length. I'm sitting in a very strange position here. For this shelf, down here, have number 10. So this is sort of my Shakespeare, Oxford classics and horrible Wordsworth classics that I bought because I was a student and couldn't afford anything nicer. So 1, 2. The Joyce that I should have started with. This is Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. As you may know if you've been following me, I've recently finished this monster, Ulysses, and one of the characters in here is also in Ulysses. So I am quite looking forward to reading this one. Reading Ulysses hasn't actually put me off reading Joyce. Horrible edition, but yes. I'm thinking maybe next year, more classics next year, and maybe getting to this one. Then we have my Penguin classics down here. The number I have for this is 6. Henry James's The Bostonians. This is one of the more readable Henry Jameses. I read this for a history class, and that was because I was doing some comparative sort of literature stuff. I looked at this novel as well as Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Blithedale Romance, which is the only Hawthorne that I've read. This does not portray feminists particularly nicely. It's about this suffragette and this man who is in love with her, but not into the whole suffragette thing. If I can remember correctly. It's a wee while since I've read this. I can't say this made me want to run out and read more James. I have read The Turn of the Screw, which is very interesting. I would recommend that you read that one. But yeah, James and women. So this is my fiction shelf. Things that aren't in a classics collection or look nice enough to go over on my nice desktop. I've chosen number 22 for the top shelf. One of the most loved and hated authors on BookTube, it would seem. This is Middlesex by J.R.R, and I haven't read any J.R.R. I've also got The Virgin Suicides there. Yes, I've heard good things about this, and I've heard bad things about J.R.R. People say that this is his best work, I think. Anything but The Marriage Plot, apparently. I think that I'll probably read The Virgin Suicides first, but maybe. Everything looks small next to War and Peace now. This is the next shelf, which is mostly still fiction. And then we have Weird Things Customers Say in Bookshops, and in some sort of order, graphic design, sort of typography and things. Number 12, which I haven't read either. Oh, it's awful. There's not much I can say about this, except that it's supposed to be very good. I bought this years and years ago, probably back in 2008 or something. Number 20. I got the second hand, so it's got a plasticky cover over it, but if I can get it in the light, there we go. Meggs' History of Graphic Design. Yes, this is what it says on the cover. It is a very comprehensive introduction to graphic design through the ages. So we start with sort of hieroglyphics and the Rosetta Stone of Egyptian stuff, and then we get onto illuminated manuscripts. That's the Book of Durrow. Sure, we have the Book of Kells in here. There it is. Enter Gutenberg and so on. But yeah, anyway, later on we've got some lovely timelines which are quite helpful. Yes, it's a great pictorial and informational. It's very informative anyway. And yes, some much more recent stuff. I did mean to sort of work my way through this, but I don't think I got much further than the first few chapters. And a lot of this early stuff is stuff that we covered in art history and in a book like Gardner's Art Through the Ages. This is basically Gardner's Art Through the Ages, but for graphic design. Now, my good friends, we're just going to sort of look upwards. This is in my wardrobe. This is kind of the overflow of books here. So these are books that I read when I was a child or sort of early teens. For this one, I have number 6, and that is the first part of Lord of the Rings. I watched the films before I read these. I did try to read them before I watched the films, but I started this one so many times, and I was probably too young when I started reading it. But yes, the type is really quite small, and yeah, it's Lord of the Rings, so he talks a lot about the hills and the mountains, and of course, when you're here in New Zealand, you see the mountains and the hills, and in the films, you see the mountains and the hills and the rivers and the lakes, and you don't need Tolkien waffling on because you can see them. But yes, I did find that quite frustrating with these. I love The Hobbit, but I would not read these again. Moving down, number 10, more poetry. I don't have much poetry on my shelf, but this is the second lot we've managed to find. It's The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot. I'm on my tippy toes here because there's no way I can get a shot of both my face and up there. You probably don't need to see my face. I studied this in a class called Sea Changes, which was all about major turning points in literature. It's really one that's very interesting to study, and I mean it's The Wasteland. It's a major work of postmodernism. Anyway, now we're back over here at a slightly different angle than before, but I can't be bothered setting it all up again properly. Those are some of the things on my shelf. I would like to do a full bookshelf tour at some point, but I'm gonna have to chop it up into different parts and actually sort out my books a bit better. Thank you, Savannah, for tagging me. I hope this was vaguely interesting to somebody. I will link the original video in the description as well as Savannah's video. So thank you again for watching. Hopefully see you next time. Bye!